Ah, young grasshopper. You want to see 25 things you missed in Cobra Kai? Well, you came to the right dojo, the ScreenRant dojo. So, like everyone else, us included, you've binged through Season 3 of Cobra Kai, right? I mean, what else is there to do during a pandemic? Now, like me, after not having a coffee for 3 hours, you are having some serious withdrawal symptoms. Well, don't worry, we've got you covered. We are going to take a look at 25 things you might have missed in Cobra Kai Season 3, including Easter eggs to the original movies, awesome behind-the-scenes anecdotes, and even references to some internet theories.
Are you sure this is right?
So, let's show no fear and dive right into some Season 3 details. And beware, spoilers will strike first. So, if you haven't seen Season 3 yet, we suggest coming back when you have. Let's break the ice by taking a look at the Break the Ice Easter egg. In Okinawa, Daniel and Kumiko sit and share a cocktail together at a local bar. The ice provided for said drinks is smashed out of large blocks. Now, if you are a massive Karate Kid fan, this practice may seem somewhat familiar to you. That's because Daniel smashes ice in a similar fashion in the Karate Kid Part 2, where he becomes involved in a wager with Mr. Miyagi's arch-nemesis Sato and his student Chozen. I think I'm going to stick with getting my ice out of an ice tray. It's much easier. Speaking of Chozen, he made his long-awaited return in Season 3, with the show filling in the blanks since his fight with Daniel in Karate Kid 2 to his return in Cobra Kai. Daniel, on his return to Okinawa, reunites with his bitter foe, Chozen, who he hasn't seen for 30 years. Chozen, in an Easter egg to his uncle Sato, pretends to still hate Daniel, leading us to believe he is still the villain.
Can I have a drink?
I don't drink.
But we soon learn that Chozen is actually a changed man and has even been running the Miyagi-Do and teaching there as a sensei. Chozen also states in a heartwarming story that he was suicidal after the events of Karate Kid 2 until Sato helped him to see the light and turn his life around. Chozen also seeks forgiveness and friendship from Kumiko, and eventually Daniel also forgives him and the two end up leaving on good terms, similar to the relationship between Miyagi and Sato in Part 2. But of course, the biggest return to take place in Season 3 is Elizabeth Shue reprising her character of Allie Mills. Her introduction to the show had been teased since Season 2, so although it wasn't shocking to see her return, it was still an undoubtedly epic moment. But no one knew that Shue would be reprising the character for definite until the very last moment, with Ralph Macchio saying he didn't know she was returning till he received the script.
Why didn't you tell me about this at lunch?
He also said that there was a backup plan in place in case she didn't return, and that they would discover it was actually her husband doing the back and forth with Johnny, which, to be honest, would have been quite strange. Thankfully, they didn't do this, and we got to see Allie back in the flesh. Another, albeit more obscure return, was one you truly might not have noticed. Daniel's journey to Okinawa was initially to help refresh his automobile business's relationship with Diona Motors, but along the way he takes a stroll down nostalgia way. At one point, though, these two roads converge when he meets up with their senior vice president of sales for Diona International. And who should be the senior vice president? None other than Yuna, aka the girl bell ringer, who Daniel saved from a typhoon in Part 2, and is even played by the same actress, Tracy Taguchi. It's another heartwarming moment, as well as a great Easter egg, and is karma truly at its finest. You can never underestimate the power of a good tea.
Sick of tea? That's like being sick of breathing.
Daniel LaRusso also seems to understand the importance of tea, as he meets up and catches up with Kumiko after spending decades apart. Before they have their ice-cold cocktails, they share a hot pot of tea. Like the ice for the cocktails, this too is a reference to Karate Kid Part 2 and the movie's famous tea ceremony. As I said, you really can't underestimate the power of a good tea. Have you ever gotten so mad you've just punched through a car window?
Give me the goddamn page!
Well, in the Karate Kid world, it seems like a sensei tradition to punch through a car's window. In Season 3 of Cobra Kai, we see Daniel doing the apparently time-honored tradition, just like his mentor's enemy Kreese, who ended up breaking car windows as he tried to punch Mr. Miyagi in the beginning of the Karate Kid Part 2. The Cobra Kai outfit are known for their memorable mantras and sayings, and even if you don't agree with them, I'm sure you can remember them. Like seriously, when I say strike first, who doesn't say the words strike hard, no mercy afterwards?
I can't hear you! Strike first, strike hard, no mercy, sir!
But there was a mantra you might have missed in Season 3. As Daniel enters the Cobra Kai dojo in the first episode of Season 3, Aftermath, he sees the mantra, "Fear does not exist," written on the wall. This was Kreese's mantra while training students in the original Karate Kid movie.
Fear does not exist! in this dojo, does it? No, Sensei!
We have mentioned a few notable appearances in Season 3 already, but there was one major one to happen at the end of the season, although they didn't actually appear on screen. In the final moments of Season 3, we see Kreese making a phone call to someone he hasn't seen in a long time. Although he doesn't see the person he is talking to, we can say with relative certainty that he was talking to Terry Silver. Silver is a major Cobra Kai benefactor and served as the main antagonist for The Karate Kid Part 3.
A man can't stand. You can't fight.
Silver was also Kreese's old friend during their time serving in the Vietnam War, and we see Kreese's time in Vietnam during a flashback. We even see him saving a guy named Twig, who their commanding officer calls Silver. I wonder if they are setting something up for Season 4. It's a well-known fact that all the coolest people have a cardboard cutout of themselves, right? No? Just me? Okay, well, anyway, Daniel comes across a cutout of Kreese because he's cool like that. Now, while it isn't the exact same cutout from the original movies, Daniel does come across a cutout of Kreese in both Karate Kid Part 1 and Part 3, because as I said, cool guys have cardboard cutouts of themselves. Now, while Chozen and Daniel may have let bygones be bygones, that doesn't mean that they didn't step back into their fighting selves, just like they did in Karate Kid Part 2, even if this time they're not enemies. But as the two go through the motions, the fight ends in a familiar fashion, with Chozen honking Daniel's nose,
Honk!
a move Miyagi performed on Kreese in Part 2. Some of the best moments of the original Karate Kid movie come through Miyagi's abstract and often dangerous methods of teaching. One of these moments is the time Miyagi teaches Daniel how to balance by standing on the bow of a small rowboat. Season 3 of Cobra Kai pays reference to this when Daniel and Sam have a father and daughter moment when they hit the water and the two make a joke about whether or not Daniel will make Sam stand on the bow of the boat.
Is that why you brought me here? To trick me into doing karate?
Oh, what? No, not at all. This has nothing to do with that.
Speaking of Miyagi and his infinite wisdom, one of the most famous sayings among many is the line,
"No such thing, bad student, only bad teacher."
They pay homage to this line in Cobra Kai when Kreese echoes the sentiment, saying,
Because you know what they say. There's no such thing as a bad student.
But Kreese doesn't just pay reference to Miyagi's lines, but also to his very own dialogue. As testosterone flares between Kreese and Daniel, Kreese says,
This time, Johnny and I will finish it once and for all.
Which is certainly a reference to the moment in the final climax of the original movie where Kreese yells at Johnny to finish him. Yeah, I wonder how that turned out. Like cool guys have cardboard cutouts of themselves, everyone knows there is no better place to go on a first date than a mini golf course. No?
Am I so out of touch?
Golf and stuff is an important part of both Cobra Kai and the original Karate Kid series. It's where Ali and Daniel go out on a date, and it's the same place where Miguel and Sam also go out on a first date. Ali and Johnny also go out there in Season 3, and you can even hear the song Feel the Night in the background, the same song from Daniel and Ali's date from the original movie. Now, as we have already mentioned, Daniel's trip to Okinawa is a literal journey down memory lane with Easter eggs aplenty. Another one we see is the return of the house from Karate Kid Part 2, which Kimiko has now inherited from her Aunt Yuki. It's almost as if the trip to Okinawa was just for the purpose of Easter eggs and callbacks or something. For a supposedly non-violent sport, soccer has its fair share of scuffles and fighting, even if it is sometimes rather melodramatic. Therefore, it is the perfect place for Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do to work out their differences, and the two opposing factions end up fighting on the soccer field. This is a direct reference to the original movie where Daniel got into a scuffle with Cobra Kai. Maybe they should just stick to soccer next time. One of the best things about Cobra Kai is that it has added a long list of complexities to the central characters and blurred the lines between right and wrong and good and bad. This is reinforced further in relation to Ali's return. In the second movie, Ali is written out in one line where Daniel says she crashed his car and left him for a guy from UCLA.
She tells me that she's just fallen in love with some football player.
Ali shows it's a little more complex than that though upon her return to Cobra Kai, saying that she was just talking to someone from UCLA when Daniel freaked out and became jealous. I know this isn't just me that thinks this, but Daniel really isn't the hero of this story. But you know, more on that later on. Now on to one of the tastier Easter eggs and coolest pieces of trivia. In another piece of loaded Kreese dialogue, Kreese says, "Let me tell you about your dad. He was always a scrapper."
But the moment I knew he was the real deal was his first All Valley.
He made the quarters, but he drew a kid named Vidal. Now, Johnny defeats Vidal in the 1984 All-Valley tournament to make it to the finals, but that's not the fight Kreese is referencing here. He is paying reference to Johnny's first year of competition in 1981, when he first went up against Vidal. But what makes this more interesting is that the actor behind Vidal is attributed to the infamous crane kick on IMDb. You know, the illegal move where Daniel knocks out Johnny? That one. Now, as you know, Johnny uses Facebook to get back in touch with Allie, but he also has some Easter egg-worthy Facebook friends. Look carefully and you will see he is friends with Shane Keller and Mallory Yund, both of whom are producers on the show. Ah, poor naive Johnny. Never befriend your bosses on social media. It never goes well, trust me. Like golf and stuff, skeleton outfits also have a constant importance in both Cobra Kai and The Karate Kid. In the original movie, Johnny and the Cobra Kai crew can all be seen wearing those infamous skeleton costumes during Halloween. Now, while the skeleton costume is referenced early on in Cobra Kai, with Miguel wearing a similar costume in the show, they also pay reference to the skeleton costume in Season 3. When Cobra Kai invades LaRusso's home in the big climax of Season 3, can you guess what one of them is wearing? Yep, you guessed it. Look closely enough at Tori's sweater and of course, you will see skeleton bones.
You better watch your back.
Now, this next Easter egg might just be us looking too far into things, but knowing how the minds behind Cobra Kai operate, we are pretty sure that this is a very deliberate Easter egg. While at the SDJC, we see Robbie reading a copy of the literary classic Lord of the Flies, which on the surface doesn't have many parallels with Cobra Kai, unless the show is going to take a very dark turn down the road. But is it probably a very wink wink nudge nudge to the maestro, Mr. Miyagi? Because who is the lord at catching flies with chopsticks? Yep, Mr. Miyagi. Okay, maybe this one is a stretch, but seriously, I'm not putting it past them to have made that an Easter egg, unless Robbie just happens to be a fan of the classics. No offense, but that is kind of unlikely. One of the most famous objects to be introduced in The Karate Kid Part 2 is the Okinawa hand drum, which is a very real traditional music item. But since it was in Part 2, it has very much been linked with the franchise. In Part 2, Daniel is inspired by the drums in his fight with Chozen and even uses the drum techniques to eventually defeat him. Seeing how important it is to the franchise, it is therefore no surprise then that the item makes an appearance in Cobra Kai when Miguel comes across it. Sam even shows Miguel the famous hand trick that Miyagi once taught Daniel back in the day and basically passes down the torch. Or drum, in this case.
Is that my drum in your pocket?
Hawk's wardrobe pays many callbacks to the original franchise, and to be honest, so does Hawk in general, with him riding on a motorbike similar to the Cobra Kai crew in the original movie. But focusing more on his wardrobe for a second, we see Hawk wearing a bright red jacket in Season 3, which is very reminiscent of the one worn by Johnny in the original movie. Now, we have already mentioned it, but there has been a constant debate surrounding the legality of the crane kick that Daniel uses on Johnny at the end of the movie. You already know my thoughts on the subject. Now, Cobra Kai has never shied away from this debate and even makes fun of it in the very first episode, where Johnny also brings into question the move's legality.
It was an illegal kick.
The showrunners decided to stoke the fire even more by making reference to it again in Season 3, when Miguel says the line,
Sensei Lawrence told me about how you beat him with an illegal kick.
Hey. The rules state anything above the waist is legal.
Yeah, this debate isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But they don't need to convince me otherwise. I know it was illegal, Daniel, and you know what they say. Cheaters never prosper. Except I guess they did in this case, because he won. So... But of course, it's not just the crane kick that has fans debating online. Like Star Wars and especially the Who Shot First debate, there are a number of Karate Kid debates. But other than the crane kick, the most notable has to be who is the real Karate Kid. Seeing as the movie centers on Daniel, the safe money is on him. But if you are like me, Barney Stinson,
whom this monster defeated with a cheap, illegal head kick,
and a few others on the internet, you will know the true Karate Kid is Johnny Lawrence. But we are not just a small band of misfits here. This theory is actually pretty popular on the internet and, with Cobra Kai, is quickly gaining traction. Like the crane kick debate, the show's producers make reference to this debate and stoke the flames through a piece of dialogue. In the first episode of Season 3, Daniel says,
"When I went to school here, I was bullied, and karate saved me."
Bull. I heard you were the real bully.
Johnny clearly isn't the only one that thinks Daniel was the villain of the movie. What makes this funnier is that the voice of the off-screen man is none other than the show's co-creator, Josh Head. See, he knows what's up. One last piece of information. We can see Daniel's 1947 Ford throughout Season 3, which was gifted to him by Mr. Miyagi. But it was also a gift for actor Ralph Macchio, with the studio giving him the car. Also, while you're here, let's keep the internet debate raging. Did Daniel use an illegal move? And who is the real Karate Kid? Let's discuss.